IRS audit scheduled for next week. My brother Derek announced at Sunday dinner, his voice carrying the particular satisfaction of someone who'd finally caught a criminal in the act. I reported your suspicious bank activity months ago. Your income doesn't match your lifestyle, the house, the car, the vacations you take. You're finally going to pay for your lies. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances while I set down my fork, processing the reality that my own brother had filed an IRS report against me because he couldn't understand how I afforded things he couldn't. What Derek didn't know, what nobody in my family knew, was that the audit he'd engineered would expose not fraud, but the quiet empire I'd built in obscurity. 47 licensed patents generating royalties from companies whose products sat in nearly every American home. The auditor's face when he discovered the truth was almost worth the betrayal. Let me tell you about the brother who tried to destroy me and accidentally revealed my success. Derek and I had never been close. Growing up, he was the golden child, athletic, popular, effortlessly successful in all the ways our parents valued. He'd played varsity football, dated cheerleaders, and graduated with the kind of social capital that translated into a sales career where his primary skill was being likable. I was the quiet one, the weird one, the girl who spent weekends disassembling electronics instead of going to parties. My parents tolerated my interests without understanding them, and Derek openly mocked what he called my nerd hobbies. "You'll never make money taking things apart," he'd told me once. "Get a real skill." I got several. My first patent was filed when I was 24. A mechanical engineering degree from Purdue had given me the foundation. Years of tinkering had given me the instinct. The invention was modest. I improved hinge mechanism for laptop screens that reduced stress fractures. A manufacturer saw the prototype, licensed the design, and suddenly I was receiving quarterly royalty checks. The amounts were small at first. A few $100s. Then a few thousand. I didn't tell anyone. The secrecy wasn't calculated initially. It was habit. My family had never shown interest in my work. When I tried to explain my engineering projects, their eyes glazed over. When I'd mentioned patent applications, they'd nodded politely and changed the subject. My accomplishments existed in a world they didn't understand and didn't want to understand. So I stopped sharing. The patents accumulated quietly. A cable management system licensed to 3 computer manufacturers. A ventilation component used in HVAC systems nationwide. A fastener design that became standard in automotive assembly. Each invention generated its own revenue stream, and each revenue stream compounded over time. By 35, I had 47 active patents. The royalties totaled approximately $2.3 million annually. I told no one. The lifestyle gap became a problem around year 6. I'd bought a house, a nice one in a good neighborhood, the kind of place that raised eyebrows when people learned my official job title was independent consultant. I drove a reasonable car, but took nice vacations. I helped my parents occasionally, quietly, in ways that didn't require explanation. Derek noticed. "Where does your money come from?" he asked at Thanksgiving, his tone accusatory. "Consultants don't make that much." "I do fine. Fine doesn't buy a $600,000 house. Are you doing something illegal?" "I'm not doing anything illegal." "Then explain it." "I don't owe you an explanation, Derek." The conversation ended, but his suspicion didn't. Derek's report to the IRS was filed in February. He documented everything he considered suspicious. My house, my car, my travel patterns, my apparent lack of traditional employment. He'd calculated what he thought my income should be based on consulting work, and compared it to my visible lifestyle. The math, to his eyes, didn't add up. He'd concluded I was either hiding income, laundering money, or involved in something criminal. Rather than asking me directly, rather than giving his sister the benefit of the doubt, he'd filed a formal report with federal authorities. He expected the IRS to expose me, to validate his suspicion, to finally prove that his weird sister wasn't actually more successful than him. The audit notice arrived in March. I wasn't worried. My taxes were impeccable, prepared by a CPA who specialized in intellectual property income, filed on time, every royalty reported to the penny. If the IRS wanted to examine my returns, they'd find exactly what I'd reported. Substantial income from patent licensing, properly documented and fully taxed. I scheduled the audit for a Wednesday afternoon and prepared my documentation. What I didn't expect was Derek showing up. "I wanted to be here when you get caught," he announced, parking in my driveway behind the auditor's sedan. Mom and Dad deserve to know the truth about where your money comes from. You reported me to the IRS. Someone had to. Your lifestyle doesn't make sense. Either you're hiding income or you're doing something criminal. Or I'm successful in ways you don't understand. Please. He laughed. You take things apart for a living. That's not success. The auditor, a methodical man named Thomas Garrett, emerged from his car with a briefcase. He introduced himself, showed credentials, and asked if we could conduct the examination inside. Of course, I said. And my brother will be leaving. Actually, I'd like to stay, Derek insisted. Family support. The auditor looked between us, clearly sensing tension. That's your choice, ma'am. I considered forcing Derek to leave. Then I considered letting him watch his assumptions collapse in real time. Fine. He can stay. The examination began in my home office. Thomas Garrett was thorough, professional, and clearly experienced. He reviewed my tax returns line by line, asked questions about income sources, and requested documentation for the royalty payments that comprised the bulk of my earnings. I provided everything. Bank statements showing deposits from licensing agreements, contracts with manufacturers, patent certificates from the USPTO, correspondence with companies whose products incorporated my designs. Derek watched, initially confident, then increasingly confused. These are real patents? He asked at one point, flipping through certificates he'd clearly never seen before. 47 of them. For what? Various mechanical and electrical designs. Components used in laptops, HVAC systems, automobiles, medical devices. Since when? Since I was 24. 11 years now. The auditor continued his review, comparing reported income against the contracts I'd provided, verifying that the royalty amounts matched what I'd declared. After 2 hours, he'd examined every document, reconciled every number, and found exactly what I'd told him he'd find. Nothing wrong. Thomas Garrett emerged from my office with an expression I couldn't quite read. Derek was pacing in the living room, his earlier confidence replaced by something that looked like dawning horror. Ms. Mitchell, your returns are in complete order, the auditor said. The income you've reported matches your documentation precisely. There's no discrepancy. Thank you. He turned to Derek, who'd been hovering nearby, clearly expecting a different outcome. Sir, your sister isn't hiding income. She has 47 licensed patents generating royalties from companies including Microsoft, Toyota, Medtronic, and several other Fortune 500 manufacturers. He paused. Did you know any of this before filing the report? Derek's mouth opened and closed. No sound emerged. The report suggested suspicious activity and potential tax evasion. Based on my examination, there's no evidence of either. Ms. Mitchell's tax compliance is actually exemplary. Her documentation is more thorough than most taxpayers I audit. But her lifestyle, the house, is entirely consistent with someone earning $2.3 million annually in patent royalties, all properly reported and taxed. The silence that followed was devastating. Derek looked at me as if seeing someone entirely unfamiliar. The weird sister who'd spent her childhood disassembling electronics had become a millionaire inventor while he wasn't watching. You make $2.3 million a year? Some years more. Some less. Depends on which products sell well. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why would I? You never asked about my work. None of you did. You dismissed everything I was interested in as nerd hobbies and assumed I'd never amount to anything. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. You wanted me to be less successful than you. When reality contradicted that, you tried to destroy me rather than reconsider your assumptions. The auditor was gathering his materials, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding around him. Ms. Mitchell, I'll close this examination as unfounded. You'll receive official notice within 30 days. He glanced at Derek. Sir, filing false reports with the IRS is a serious matter. You may want to consult an attorney about potential liability. He left. Derek and I stood in my living room, the room in the house he'd reported as evidence of fraud, facing each other across years of dismissal and one devastating betrayal. I was trying to protect the family, he said finally. I thought you were doing something wrong. You thought I couldn't possibly be successful. That's different. Your life didn't make sense. My life made perfect sense. You just didn't bother to understand it. I moved toward the door, a clear invitation for him to leave. You reported your own sister to federal authorities because you couldn't accept that she might be more successful than you. That's not protection. That's sabotage. I didn't know about the patents. You didn't want to know. Every time I tried to share my work, you mocked it. Every time I mentioned an accomplishment, you dismissed it. You created a version of me that was small and unsuccessful, and when reality contradicted that version, you tried to tear me down rather than update your beliefs. He had no response. My parents learned the truth that evening. Derek, apparently incapable of keeping anything to himself, had called them immediately after leaving my house. By dinner, they knew about the patents, the royalties, the millions of dollars their daughter had earned while they'd been worried about her career prospects. My mother called first. Why didn't you tell us? Because you never asked. Because every time I tried to discuss my work, you changed the subject. Because Dad called my projects tinkering, and you called them hobbies, and neither of you ever considered that tinkering and hobbies could lead to anything valuable. We would have been proud. Would you? Or would you have found ways to diminish it, the way you always did? That's nice, dear, but when are you going to find a real job? I stopped sharing because sharing never led to support. Silence. I'm sorry, she said finally. We should have paid more attention. Yes, you should have. The aftermath reshaped my family in ways I hadn't anticipated. Derek's report didn't result in legal consequences for him. The IRS doesn't typically prosecute mistaken reporters, but the social consequences were severe. Word spread through our extended family that he'd tried to have his sister investigated for fraud because he couldn't accept her success. His reputation, built on being likable, suffered damage that likability couldn't repair. My parents tried to rebuild our relationship. Sunday dinners resumed, but they were different now. They asked about my work, genuinely asked, with follow-up questions and apparent interest. I'd become visible to them in ways I'd never been before. I wasn't sure how to feel about attention that required a crisis to activate. The patents continue to generate income. I've filed 7 more since the audit, bringing the total to 54. The royalties fluctuate with market conditions and product life cycles, but the portfolio provides financial security that most people never achieve. I've started sharing more openly. Not broadcasting, but not hiding either. When people ask what I do, I tell them, I invent things. Mechanical components, electrical systems, solutions to problems that manufacturers didn't know they had. The weird girl who took things apart learned how to put things together in ways that mattered. Derek and I don't speak much anymore. The betrayal was too fundamental. Not just the report itself, but what it revealed about how he saw me. A sister he'd dismissed so completely that success seemed impossible, fraud more believable than achievement. He's apologized. Several times, in various ways. But apologies don't undo the willingness to destroy. They just acknowledge it happened. Some relationships can't survive certain revelations. When your brother calls federal authorities because he can't accept your success, the foundation crumbles into something that can't be rebuilt. The auditor's question still echoes sometimes. Did you know any of this before filing the report? Derek didn't know. He didn't want to know. He'd constructed a version of me that served his ego. The unsuccessful sister who validated his own mediocrity and defended that construction with federal enforcement. But the truth doesn't care about ego. The patents exist. The royalties deposit quarterly. The success he tried to disprove is documented in contracts with companies whose products he probably uses daily. He types on computers with my hinge design. He drives cars with my fasteners. He lives in a world shaped by inventions he dismissed as worthless. The irony is perfect, and I no longer care if he appreciates it.